update report here on our channel, Everything Jax Real Estate, where we talk about everything we're seeing in the current Jacksonville real estate market. In this video, we are going to be going over the market report for the Jacksonville Beaches and the Jacksonville Southside area as it relates to September of 2024. Now, in the back end of the year, we tend to normally see inventory rise, sales start to slow down when school starts, as well as prices start to stagnate a little bit. So in this video, we're going to be diving into if we're still seeing those same trends or if we're seeing things differently compared to years past. Also, before we get into this video though, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you get notified if there's more content like this in the future. All right, now stay tuned because when I come back, we're going to go over all the data for the Beaches and Southside for September. All right, so now we are going to go ahead and start checking out all the good information for the Beaches and Southside. Now, if you're not familiar with Jacksonville, Jacksonville is a very large city here in Florida. And with that being said, because we're such a large city, there's a lot of different areas of town when people are moving here they like to focus on. One such area tends to be the Beaches and Southside area of Jacksonville, which is going to be pretty much anything east and south of the river, but only in Duval County. So we're not gonna go down to St. Johns County. So it's a pretty large area, but it's an area that a lot of times is really when people move to the area, that area or the area that we highlight in these videos is the Mandarin area, or areas that people tend to want to really gravitate towards and move to because of schools, shopping, social settings, or again with the beaches, obviously you have the ocean right there. So it becomes very popular areas, which is why we highlight them. Now, the first thing we're going to highlight in this specific market update is the amount of pendings we had on the market at the end of September and how that related to the amount of overall homes on the market at the end of September. Now, what we saw is we had 100 sales pending compared to an overall 620 homes that were available for the area. Now, if you've been following along with these previous videos I've done, you'll know that 100 is actually less than what we've seen in months past, and 620 is actually more than what we've seen in months past. Now, obviously, it leaves 520 homes still available for sale at the end of September, but what that really means is when we look at the amount of homes pending versus the amount of overall homes in the market, that gives us our pen to list ratio, which in this case was 16.1%. Our pen to list ratio, that percentage tells us a lot. It tells us, how much inventory is on the market, it tells us how much demand is on the market. And overall, what this tells us at 16.1% is that we're seeing demand really start to come down some across the board for the area. Now, obviously, that can be for two factors. Factor one, maybe there's just less buyers, and factor two, maybe there's more sellers. And both of those are playing into each other, creating this much lower percentage than we've seen in months past, in years past. Now, what that means is that if you are looking to sell your house and you want to put your home on the market in the next 60 days, you're probably going to be in a little bit of a longer holding pattern because of the fact that there are more options available to buyers. Buyers don't have to anymore, look at a house and make a decision within 24 hours or even less. Now buyers can wait a couple days or even a couple weeks in some cases to see what says the market, run their numbers with their lender to figure out if the payment that they're looking at is where they want it to be. So if you're a seller, you have to just be very patient right now or market your home more aggressively to get around that cycle of these buyers waiting a little bit longer. And if you're a buyer, it just means you have more time, which is always a great thing, and more options available, especially as rates have come down a little bit over the course of this past year. So all in all, it's really it's really a good thing to be able to really get an idea of what's going on in the market here. Now, when we take a closer look, we do notice that homes in the $800,000 to $1 million range had the largest number of contracts pending for sale. Now, the reason for that, because you may ask yourself, that's a high price point. If you watch these previous videos, it's a high price point to have, that be where the majority of the contracts are in relation to how many are on the market for that specific price range. And the reason for that, right now there's a lot of changes in the market, with high demand, or low demand, high supply, as well as, the fact that we have the election coming up, the schools going on, some weather events have occurred this year, specifically in the last, 30 days or so. And so realistically, when you look at that, a lot of times those price points of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, they're a little more susceptible to waiting or holding off than some of the higher price points where they're not as dependent on rates or pricing in general, or other events that are going on countrywide. So that does make a lot of sense when you sort of see that that's the highest amount of homes with pending sales. Now, we also did see too that homes in the $400,000 and $600,000 price range made up the large amount of inventory on the market for their specific price range, and that's a continuation from previous videos and previous months. And that's pretty common because even though we've seen some pricing come down in the area, that's still going to be your ideal price point for the area, all things considered. So for that to still be in that range is not uncommon. Now, when we start looking at the median list price of homes on the market, we do see that they're up to $737,000. So what you're most likely seeing right now here in the Beaches and Southside is those higher price point homes are hitting the market a little bit more than the lower price point homes. Partially because they're getting more contracts, as we've already highlighted, but partially because, again, homes at those price points, they're less dictated on market conditions the way homes at the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 price point are. So that does not come as a surprise, and realistically, that has no bearing on what homes are selling for. That's just the median list price across the board for all active homes. Next we're going to look at this graph, which measures the difference of contracts pending versus properties for sale. And what you'll see, and again, if you've seen these previous videos and these previous market updates, you'll know that really at $1 million or more for the price point, there's still not a ton of inventory, and so there's still a decent amount of contracts pending in relation to that inventory. So it's been less effective per se with the slowdown of the market we've seen the last couple months. But what you do also see is homes in that $200,000 to $600,000, $800,000 price point. We're really starting to get a good separation there between contracts pending and properties for sale. So the question you may ask yourself is, well, if I'm looking to sell my house, how can I be one of those homes that go under contract fairly quickly or quick enough so I don't get stuck in that on market cycle of 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, who knows how many days. Well, there's a plan that you can put in place, and we're very good at creating the right plan for you and your family for your house, and ultimately to help it get sold for as quickly as possible for as high a number as possible. Because there is a lot of different strategies you can do. Some strategies can be beneficial, some not so much. It all is dependent on where your home is, as well as what the condition and price are going to be for the home. So again, that's something we can always help with if you ever need it. But that being said, with this big of a contrast between properties for sale and contracts pending, again, we have at the high side around 400,000. We have over 120 homes for sale compared to only 20 or so under contract. That does leave a lot of options. And the way you can look at that too is, at these different price points, for 400,000, that could mean that you have 6 months of inventory. Well, if you do have 6 months of inventory, then that's more of a seller's or buyer's market or equilibrium market. And so it's not really much of a seller's market compared to years past. Now, we also saw that there was a total of 898 contracts that closed in the last 6 months. That's a very low, very big drop, which is not surprising because in the previous months' videos we've seen this drop kind of coming. Again, more homes in the market, less homes selling, less homes going under contract. However, the median list price or sold price is still $577,000. So even though sales are slowing down, pricing isn't necessarily dropping the way maybe some buyers are hoping or thinking it will. So it does bring a good point that if you're waiting for prices to drop, they may not drop the way you want them to. But what you can do right now is, because there's a lot more inventory, is you can potentially negotiate the price down or get some other concessions to make that price more affordable for you and your family in the long term to get into the house that you really want, but you're just trying to wait right now for the market to change or to come down some to get it for a better price. It's one of those things what I like to use, bird in hand, two in the bush. Sometimes you have to look at what you have available at that time versus what you could have in the future, but also could lose. Just something to think about. Now, we did see 154 homes failed to sell. That's not really too big of a difference from months past. And really, with homes failing to sell, they can fail to sell for a lot of different reasons, not always market dependent, as we've identified in other videos, or obviously can even be seen on this language that has been added to this report. But again, it can be seller related, it can be agent related, it can just be market related or job related. So it's something that we do monitor, but something that's not pop up any red flags for me right this second. Then from there, we're gonna look at days on market. So for days on market, what we can see here is for active homes in the market, we are seeing a median time of about 53 days in the market. So if you're gonna put your home on the market in today's world, in today's current, market conditions and climate, you should expect that you're probably gonna take, roughly a month and a half to 2 months to sell your home. Doesn't mean it can't sell sooner, doesn't mean it can't take longer. But that being said, one thing to take into account with that is that ultimately that is a bit of a healthy market in some regards. In years past, especially for sellers during COVID, there was almost a little bit of a ease of selling your home because of the fact that we had so much demand coming to Jacksonville from other states, other areas, because of the fact that there was a lot of wage increases over those years during COVID. Put a lot of money in a lot of people's pockets to be able to buy the homes or buy a home, and so there was a lot of buyers and not the demand to support those buyers. Well, currently we're actually seeing the opposite. But let's backtrack even further to before all that even started. So in 2017, 2016, 2018, even early on in 2019, for those years, even going as far back as 2015, 2014, for a home to be in the market a month and a half to 2 months, that was, to some degree, that was fairly standard. And it wasn't to say that you had your home priced too high, it was just the way the market was at the time. And so ultimately, we saw such a stark change during COVID that now seeing it kind of pull back some, it has thrown some people off. And so ultimately, with that being the case, I'm here to tell you this is still very normal. Now, obviously, if you're wanting to sell your home fairly quickly, it's not necessarily what you want to hear, but it's what you have to hear. And that's something we always pride ourselves on, is we're going to tell you how it is, whether it's good or bad. But in this case, I don't think it's either. I think it's just, again, us getting back to more of a healthy equilibrium market across the board. And if you're looking to buy a home currently, it just, again, means that you're not necessarily in the driver's seat, but you have more power now than you have had in the last 4 or 5 years. So again, huge positive for you as a buyer, more of a non-event for you as a seller. It's just more, curbing expectations on where, it used to be. Doesn't mean it can't come back there to some degree. We could easily see demand increase, especially as rates potentially come down, in the next year or two. But ultimately, we probably won't see what we saw during COVID, at least anytime soon. So just something to think about. Now, we look at the sold properties. When we look at homes that sold in the last 6 months, we actually saw that there was a much lower days on market. So the days on market for homes that sold in the last 6 months were actually 17 days on the market versus, again, an active time, 53 days. So 17 days on the market, the biggest thing to take away from that is, again, homes that are priced more aggressively or, allow for buyers to have the room to do what they need to do with the home. They're not seeing the same kind of time frames on market as the majority of homes. And so therefore, the days on market for those have obviously been much shorter in relation to the actives. And then obviously, as we already discussed, the median price of those was also around $577. So now when we go to look at the 6-month window, now we're going to look at the 1-month window. We're going to compare and contrast the two. So when we look at the 1-month window for solds, what we do find is the median sold price was $569, so a small drop from a 6-month kind of range. But the days on market jumped to 34 days. Now keep in mind, as I said at the beginning of this video, when we're in this time of year, this is typically a bit of a slower time of the year, and so realistically, it's not uncommon to see days on market go up with prices coming down a little bit because of the fact that demand does drop some. So when we're looking at that 6-month window of 17 days on the market with the average or median price of $577, it's not uncommon that we're seeing this days on market go down with price, stagnating is what we'll call it, because again, part of it also just comes down to what homes sold and again, where they were at as far as condition wise. But again, 34 days on the market does kind of show that now we're starting to get some of those homes that were in the market a bit longer into this data, which does make a huge difference for the days on market, which is why we're now seeing twice as long on the market for home to get sold compared to in the 6-month window. From there, the next thing we're going to look at is the median listed sales ratio for the area. Now, the listed sales ratio is just going to tell us, how much did the house sell in relation to its list price versus its sold price. So the closer it is to 100%, the closer seller, across the board got to their asking price. One thing it does not take into account is any reductions in price before under contract. So if a house started at $500,000, came down to $450,000, and then got an offer for $445,000, it's only going to take into account the $450 versus the $445, not the $500 versus the $445. So just something to take into account, to keep in mind. Ultimately, it is one of those things that it's good to know both. But in this case, the biggest one we're going to focus on is, again, what did a seller agree to for their house with a buyer? And what we're seeing is that it was 97.8% as far as how much a seller got for their house compared to how much they wanted for their house. So realistically, if a house was selling for $100,000, it means a seller got roughly just under $98,000 of for their house. Now, a lot of times that can be for a buyer asking for closing cost concessions or rate buy downs, or again, reduction of the price. So it's a very common thing in a normal market to have that number be at 97% or even a little bit less. So in future videos, future months updates, we'll be surprised if we see that number come down some as well. Now, when we look at across the board too, we do see that the absorption rate for the area was 3.5 months based on the last 6 months of sales. So keep in mind, that number will probably go up as we go through the rest of this year because of the fact that we are in that slower buying season compared to typically that spring and summer. And so with that being said, 3.5 months just means that if no new homes hit the market as of today, we'd be out of homes to sell in roughly like 105 days. So ultimately, it does mean that we still are a little bit lower in inventory, but what the data overall is showing us is that inventory is constantly increasing right now due to typical seasonality market trends. And then lastly, I want to kind of break down that absorption rate into the different price points within the area. So what you can see on this table is that the lower price points, really anything under $600,000, it still is somewhat lower inventory, and therefore it still is considered a bit more of a seller's market. But realistically, what we're really seeing is we are seeing that start to level off some. And what the data kind of shows you that is really any homes between $600,000 and $1.6. That's really going to tell you a lot of what's going on with the market. And that's going to kind of give you an indicator of where that $200,000 to $600,000 price points are going to probably end up as we get further along in the year. So keep in mind, anything under 3 months inventory, really good seller's market. Anything between 3 and 6 months inventory, it's a little over a seller's market, but still not, almost equilibrium, not really a seller's, not really a buyer's. Anything over 6 months is a buyer's market between 6 to 9 months. But again, still kind of equilibrium, so it still will kind of depend a little bit on house by house based off where it's located, as well as the condition of it in relation to the price. Anything over 9 months inventory truly is a bit more of a buyer's market. So it's going to be a market where you have that ability to be able to dictate, your price a little bit more with the seller, so long as they're willing to negotiate with you. So for instance, homes like that $1.8 to $2 million range is a great price point if you're watching this video and you're in that price point to, see what's available and potentially go after a home in that price point, because the seller is probably more motivated to work with you than, say, if it was a $200,000 to $400,000 house when it comes to negotiating. So that being said, that's going to wrap up this market update for the Beaches and Southside. Overall, if you have any questions of anything we went over, or you want to dive into this deeper and further with me, in the description of this video is linked to my calendar as well as my phone number. Feel free, you can schedule time on my calendar to meet face to face, through Zoom, or again, a phone call to go over any questions you have as far as it concerns the market here in Jacksonville, and specifically the Beaches and Southside. But obviously any areas open for, free game as well. And as always, feel free if any questions and you just want to drop them in the comment section, feel free to drop them in the comment section as well. We'll make sure to get those answered, as soon as possible. And as always, make sure you stay coming back for our future videos, because with this, a lot of it comes down to, as you see more of these, it really gives you a better idea of where the market's kind of going, where it's coming from. And so overall, they do become very beneficial if you are looking to buy or sell a home here in Jacksonville anytime in the next 6 to 12 months. So always here to help, and ultimately always want to help provide as much knowledge as I can to you, the audience. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you haven't yet already, please like this video and subscribe to our channel as we work to continue to build it up to provide more great content for you. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys on the next video.